Welcome friends to another r/IDontWorkHereLady video. Today we've got a crazy story of a Karen trying to pay with fake money. But first, a story from Just Me 23222. Karen gets more than she bargained for. To start off, let me say that this takes place in a not small, not large town in a southern state in the US. This will be important later. A friend of mine's kept bugging me to post this, so I broke down and finally did. I have to apologize for length, but I can't think of any other way to tell the story. So I'd been out doing some things for work and was heading home when I realized that I didn't have any wine and was having people over for dinner that evening. I decided to stop at a liquor store as I decided to not only buy a few bottles of wine, but a nice bottle of whiskey as well, as I was running low and where I lived, you could buy wine and beer in a supermarket, but hard liquor could only be purchased at a liquor store. As it was a place I went to frequently, I knew most of the people who worked there, so I chatted for a moment with the Tom behind the counter as there were no other customers at the time. After our conversation, I went over to where the wine was and started looking to see what was available and what I would like for the evening. I guess I'd been searching for around 20 minutes or so, pulling bottles off the shelf, reading the labels and putting them back, and was so engrossed in what I was doing that I hadn't noticed that there was someone else that had come in. Tom had yelled to me a few minutes earlier that he was going to run in the back and pull some boxes to restock the shelves, and he knew I could spend hours looking at wines just to pick the right ones. So he said that if anyone came in to just give him a shout. As I was kneeling at one of the shelves, I felt a presence behind me and heard a not so subtle clearing of a throat. My first thought was that someone wanted to get into where I was, and being so oblivious to my surroundings, I hadn't noticed them there. Not looking up, I said sorry and moved to one side, continuing to take bottles, read the label, and then put them back. Then I heard the second, much louder, ahem. Now let me explain that the store had no real dress code for their employees, except that they needed to look neat. I that day was wearing a black suit with a black shirt. No, I'm not a member of the family and my name doesn't end in a vowel, but this will be important later. Not something that you would see an employee wearing here. This was then followed by Karen, yes, what else would I call her, speaking, "I swear I have nothing but problems with you people who work here. You never want to help." Now, I do have to say, I've never had a problem with ever getting help here, so I start to tell her, "Tom's in the back, let me call him to which she interrupts, "No, you are right here, you can help me, or are you too lazy?" I start to say, "Sorry ma'am, but I don't work here," and stand up but only got half of it out when I guess she saw my white collar. Yes, I am a priest, and while I usually wear normal clothes if I would stop at the store, I'd been coming back from a hospital visit at the time, and all the employees knew who I was, but, appearances. Anyway, she took one look, stepped back, dropped the bottle she was holding and started stammering. I guess that seeing a preacher buying liquor? It's down south, more Baptist than Catholics, so anyone in black is a preacher. She lost her ability to reason. By the way, some of the biggest drunks I know are preachers, and started screaming like a banshee. I couldn't comprehend much of what she was saying, but did catch a "how dare you" or a "going to heck" here and there. I tried to calm her down, with no such luck, and Tom must have heard the commotion and sprinted out the back. About the time, some bottles started flying, as well as a purse and some flailing arms. Rather than come over to where we were, it seems that he went over to the counter and dialed 911, and a few moments later, came over to us and tried to get between her and I, but Karen wasn't having it. While I'd done a pretty good job of avoiding or deflecting the projectiles, arms, and purse, Tom wasn't so lucky and was hit square in the forehead with a bottle, sending him flying into an entire rack of wine. Fortunately, as this happened, the police had arrived and, seeing the wild banshee make another run at me, subdued her, taking her to the floor and restraining her. The officer that had arrived, sensing he would need a bit of assistance, called for another officer and held her down until help arrived. He also called for an ambulance for Tom, seeing he was dazed and the blood running out of his head, and a few places she had caught me. Every time he tried to ask what had happened, she would start her ranting again and no one could get a word in or understand anything she was saying. Help arrived about 5 minutes later, and they had to drag her as she wouldn't move, except to kick and spit at the officers. The paramedics, who I knew from visits to the hospital, arrived a few minutes later and treated Tom and myself, though I kept telling them that Tom was worse off than I. Tom ended up going to the hospital to get checked out and get a few stitches. So the officers took his statement there, and I gave them mine at the scene. I found out later that she was the wife of some big shot lawyer, aren't they always? And he ended up getting her off on community service, and no one was ever able to find out why in the world she went off like that. I guess the realization that the clergy are actually human beings just did her in. Everybody else ended up being just fine, and Tom never stopped telling the story as long as I lived down there. This is my only I Don't Work Here Lady experience, though sure as heck not nearly my only Karen story. Those will have to be for another time. And thank God. Again, I'm sorry for the length of this, but I hope you enjoyed it. Be honest, if you were in a store and you went to a wine section and you saw a priest there with the little collar on and everything, would that kind of blow your mind to see that? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is from Mike_OxOnFire. Okay, Karen, she's fired. Happy now? I've just come back from a quick trip to the States via 2 days in Germany. Business, don't ask. So of course, being British and having read so much about people's experiences in places like the Wall of Marts, well, I had to see one for myself. I'll admit I went to a load of other places and I can't remember what uniforms people wore, so details are sparse in that respect. This story starts with me walking through the Wart Mall, at once impressed with the range and the prices, and faintly horrified by some of the food. As I'm walking through, I hear the dreaded harumphing of an approaching needy, wild Karen. She wasn't looking at me, but at a teenaged girl. Now, the girl was wearing jeans, jacket, handbag, and absolutely no uniform. This Karen starts whipping up a storm of demands and threats, and the poor girl looked like she was about to cry. Something had to be done. I decided that I'd intervene, but before I'd taken 2 steps, a genuine, bona fide, suit-wearing legend arrived, and alright, I didn't know he was a legend immediately, so I'm getting ahead of myself. The legend, booming over Karen's squawking diatribe, said, "What seems to be the problem?" Karen was taken aback by this voice, but soon regained hers and started complaining about everything the girl hadn't done and how she should be fired, blah blah blah. The guy turns to the girl and says, "Right. I'm officially promoting you to customer. You're fired. Enjoy your shopping experience." The girl had clearly figured out what he was doing and couldn't stop grinning. The legend then turns back to Karen and says, as the title suggests, she's fired. Happy now? Karen saw the girl still smiling and decided she was even less happy, nearly shouting, "But I want her to get something or the other," and the legend stops her in her tracks and says, "That's a customer you're harassing. If you continue to harass her or any other customers in this store, I'll have those large men from security haul you out the shop." Karen harumphed again, albeit more quietly, stuck her nose up in the air and stalked off. As she got to the end of the aisle, the teenager just burst out laughing, and it was such an infectious laugh, the legend joined in. Brilliant. I appreciate the attempt to at least satisfy the Karen as far as the firing thing goes. But it goes without saying that it just went apparently right over that Karen's head. Our next story is from Helionetic. A middle schooler handing out flyers is generally not a paid employee. When I was about 14, my best friend and I were roped into flyering for her mom's best friend's boyfriend's new business. You read that right, I never even met the man. It was a specialty shop for artisan hot sauces and olive oils, and we were paid $20 to stand outside for 5 hours trying to get the word out. Quite reasonably, a lot of people had questions about what brands they carried, their hottest sauces, if they were any good, and so on. Usually we would just shrug and say, "Sorry, no idea," and people would accept it and move on. It's the kind of touristy college town where all the action's on the main street, and most people will walk circles from end to end to just hang out and window shop. And this one old lady passed us by several times, and every time she would ask us a new question. The 5th time it happened, she sighed and started lecturing us about representing a business and good employee practices and how we're not being paid to not know anything about the company we work for. I kind of looked at her in my gangly, barely a teenager, and in the height of my emo phase glory, complete with the Sharpied knee-high Vans and spiky jet black hair, and said, "Look, I'm in middle school. I'm barely being paid enough to give you this piece of paper. do you want the coupon or not?" Her husband immediately started laughing while she sputtered, grabbed his arm, and primly walked away like I hadn't said anything. The look on her face makes me smile to this day. Bonus story: the same day at about hour 4, I had repeated my hot sauce and olive oil spiel enough times that the words had lost all meaning to me. Now, this town happens to be known for having a truly incredible amount of lesbians, and I was a baby queer who thought every GNC woman was the next Butch Aphrodite, and I laid my eyes on the most incredible woman I've ever seen in my life. I rushed up to her, shouted, "Hot oil for your interest?" and immediately bolted in the other direction. No, my friends have never let me live it down, and no, my flirting skills have not since improved. "Hot oil for your interest?" Well, my friend, if you didn't seal the deal with that, it just wasn't meant to be. This next story is from Ancient Visitor. "Do you even work here? I was working in our pram store, and a lady with her mother comes in and asks for assistance. They wanted to know how this pram collapsed down. I showed them, but before I'd completed it, they asked to see the next one, then the next, then the next. It seemed they weren't really interested in a purchase, but were enjoying seeing how fast I could close and open the prams. I'd been demonstrating for around 10 minutes when I stopped and asked them if it was a certain size they were after, and they just said they wanted to see how they all fold down. Although they hadn't watched even one through its complete process, they then started on the next row, both asking for different prams to be shown. Instead of showing them, I just told them that those prams have the same folding mechanism as a couple of the others I had already demonstrated. This is when they got outright rude. They started having a loud conversation about how I probably had no idea how to fold the prams, and how impossible it was to get good workers, and how the shop should not put salespeople on who don't know what they're doing. I own the business. I'm just standing there watching them do all this. Then they turned to me and asked, "Do you even work here?" I said, No, I don't, and walked away. Customers can be so rude. You gotta love that OP literally owns the whole operation, so if a customer is just being a total jerk, they can just say, "Yeah, you know what, I don't actually work here," walk away, and they're not gonna get in trouble for it. And our final story of the day is by Cast1425. Customer tried paying with fake money, expected me to serve him. I'm 17-year-old female and I work at Michael's, the craft store. This happened the other week. I was on my lunch break shopping as a normal customer, no uniform or identification that says I work there, and this man comes running up to me asking me if I work here. I told him yes, but technically not right now since I'm on my lunch and not being paid. He proceeds to ignore my entire sentence and grabbed me by the arm. This man was probably in his early 30s, and as I stated before, I'm 17 and a very small female. As he drags me to the register, he's saying, "Your cashier needs help," and I've been waiting for my change for 5 minutes now. I ask him to please remove his hand from me before I drop the candles I was holding, and to his benefit, he did. We make it up to the front, and there's a long line with one cashier working. I proceed to just page on the PA system for backup, and go back to my lunch break. Next thing I know, the man's friend is coming up to me and also grabs me by the arm to drag me to the registers. I exclaim, "What is with you and your friend and your need to put your hands on me? Now please remove them before I get someone to escort you out." My manager then approached me and asked if I could hop on the register for just a couple of minutes and I'll get an extra $5 for my lunch. Annoyed, I do what she asks and hop on the register and start ringing up the guy who grabbed me. He had a $3,000 basket of sewing lights and Visa gift cards and pulled out a wad of cash. So I took the cash from him, and it definitely didn't feel right. So I put them through our bill readers and marked them with the counterfeit marker, and both showed up as fake bills. I proceed to hand back all the money he gave me and told him that he needs to leave the store and that he's not welcome back, and I will be informing my manager and they'll decide whether a police report needs to be filed. The guy fast walks out the door and I tell my manager everything and tell them I'll be needing 15 minutes more lunchtime since the guy took up 18 minutes of my time and wasted them. I didn't get the extra lunchtime. Side note, I know that this is for people that don't work at the store the confrontation happened in, but technically on unpaid time, I don't work there and shouldn't be obligated to help. It's a little spooky when you realize it was probably all part of their ploy to try and get you to just move up to the register, quickly check them out, then go back to what you're doing, it's easy to see how somebody who gets pissed off from them might just get a little flustered, check them out real quick, and make a mistake. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So of all these stories I've read today, which is your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you haven't yet, if you could like and subscribe, that would mean a lot to me. Whatever you do, whether it's liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, all of it helps grow this channel, and I appreciate the heck out of it. So until next time, I'll see you all tomorrow with some more stories.